Welcome into our week 4 NFL DFS first look video and lineup builder. I'm your host, Ben Hostler, and this video is presented by Rolling Insights. If you guys have never checked out Rolling Insights yet, please head over to the website, rollinginsights.com, create your free account. We have tons of data spaces available for the community. Obviously, my content gets posted there every single day throughout the football season on the blog. The data spaces, we have the daily live streams where I go live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, as well as Sunday morning at 11 a.m. So make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you like the video today, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to see how many subscribers we can run up throughout this football season. With that being said, let's get into the NFL DFS talk. Coming off a very good week 3 for me. 2-1 in cash games on DraftKings, 3-0 on FanDuel. I swept cash games this past weekend, and I think that it was fairly, I don't want to say easy, but it was very clear, where you should go with your lineup, which I talked about on the Sunday morning live stream. On the first look video last week, I had plugged in Carson Wentz to my lineup. We did not have the Jaden Daniels news. I'm pretty sure I mentioned Marcus Mariota would be available should we get the Jaden Daniels news. We did get that news, and it became clear that, you were playing Marcus Mariota much higher of a rushing floor than Carson Wentz. They were the same price, minimum price on DraftKings. And yeah, just had a very, very strong week. And I actually went through, I don't typically do this, but because I thought that week 3 was such a clear cash game week, I went back through my head-to-heads and, found people that, in my opinion, played a bad team or made, clear mistakes. And I kind of took a note of those users. And, when I'm going and registering my head-to-heads this weekend, I'll probably seek them out. So to finish up the recap here on DraftKings, my lineup scored 168.68 points. We went Marcus Mariota, Kenneth Walker, Jordan Mason, Puka Nacua, Romo Dunze, Keenan Allen, Trey McBride, Christian McCaffrey, and the Falcons defense. As far as decisions, I thought that, choosing between Puka Nacua and CeeDee Lamb was a conversation, but I plugged him into the first look lineup last week. It's just Puka Nacua as it currently stands. The role that he currently has is absolutely unbelievable. So I thought that was a question a little bit. And then the big one for me was Keenan Allen, using him versus getting up to Jackson Smith-Njigba, or honestly, Sunday morning, I actually liked Ricky Pearsall better than Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he was a little bit cheaper. So it was debating whether or not to play Ricky Pearsall or Keenan Allen. I ended up just using Keenan Allen. It worked out either way, but Pearsall absolutely smashed. So he was pretty low owned in tournaments. I thought that was good. As far as FanDuel goes, like I said, 3-0 on FanDuel, and I've said this a few times on stream this week. FanDuel cash games are making DFS great again, in my opinion. I've always been a heavy DraftKings player. Anyone that watches the videos knows that, but I have had a lot of fun playing FanDuel cash this year, and I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm not going to up my volume a ton, but I just want it to be known if you're playing any cash games in the year 2025 and you're not playing on FanDuel, I would recommend heading over there. It's been fun. So on FanDuel, again, easy winner. I was top 5% in every 50-50 or double up I played in. My lineup scored 169.72, and it was Caleb Williams, Kenneth Walker, Jordan Mason, Ricky Pearsall, Romo Dunze, Puka Nacua, Trey McBride, Christian McCaffrey, and the Jaguars defense. So, it was a pretty kind of similar build across both sites for me. FanDuel, you just had Pearsall really underpriced. So playing him versus Keenan, had the same 3 running backs, Walker, Mason, and McCaffrey on both sites. Had the same tight end, had Puka and Rome on both sites. And then FanDuel, you didn't have to use Mariota. You could get up to Caleb Williams. So it worked out either way. All right, that does it for last week's recap. Let's see if we can keep the hot streak going here. And let's head into week 4. And let's build this first look NFL DFS lineup. This week is another interesting slate, kind of similar setup to last week, where we have 11 games. Some good teams, missing off the main slate, not quite to the extent of last week, but there's some spots that we don't have on the main slate. That being like the Miami Dolphins defense, still not on the main slate, so we don't have to deal with that. Green Bay and Dallas not on the main slate, but when we look at the totals of these games, looking at these early Sunday 1:00 games, Eagles Bucks 44.5, Saints Bills 48.5. That's the highest total of the early slate, and that's because the Bills are 16.5-point favorites, and they're really propping that 48.5-point number up with their team total. Then we have Lions Browns 44.5, Titans Texans 38.5 is gross, Chargers Giants 44.5, Commanders Falcons 45.5. And then Panthers, Patriots, 43.5. So there are no good totals on this early slate on Sunday. And then you get to flip it to the 4:00 games, and we're seeing a 49.5 in Indy, LA, 46.5 49ers, Jags, 48.5 Ravens, Chiefs, and 47.5 Bears, Raiders. So all of the good totals are in the afternoon games. So for tournaments, I think that's going to create, a lot of interesting spots potentially for late swap after the 1:00 games are coming to a close. And just for overall construction, you're going to see a lot of ownership pushed into these afternoon games. Maybe it's might be a fun week to play the early slate, like the early only slate, and kind of see what you can do there. But let's dive into let's get into quarterback here. So at the top we have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Jane Daniels, we don't know if he's going to play. I'm assuming he does get back and play for this game, but he would be firmly behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson for me as it currently stands. You then have Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and then Brock Purdy if he plays as well. Those are the 6K and up quarterbacks. I think that the conversation this week in cash games will be whether you're getting up to Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, or going down to this mid to low 5K tier. And then there's another option, which I'll talk about in a second. So at the top, Josh Allen, really good spot for him against the Saints, but everyone's going to talk about it this week. You have to worry about, a potential blowout, which, typically I don't worry about that in DFS, but when you're 16.5-point favorites at home, that does warrant some consideration of the fact that there could be a blowout, because 16.5-point spread in the NFL is absolutely insane. And then you have Lamar Jackson on the road against KC. He's been good, 29, 26, 27. None of that is really like smashing for his price tag, but it's not bad either. Like you would take a 29 or a 28 from Lamar in your cash game lineup at 7,500. You would take that. So it's an interesting conversation at the top. And then moving down, I just don't want to play any of these 6K guys. I'd rather get up to Lamar or Josh Allen. And then dropping down here, we'll just talk about the really cheap guy, that being $4,500 Jackson Dart, making his first NFL start against the Los Angeles Chargers. We played a cheap quarterback last week with Marcus Mariota. I think this is a way different situation. Marcus Mariota, veteran NFL player. We've seen him have success in his recent spot starts for the Commanders or when he's been in the game. Good rushing floor, really good spot against the Raiders defense, who were on a short week traveling cross country for an early game. This is a little bit of a different situation. Now, the Chargers are traveling cross country for a 1:00 Eastern game, but the Chargers have one of the best defensive units in the NFL so far this season. Jackson Dart, first ever start. And he's not min price. He's 4,500. If he was 4K, I do think, we're having a little bit of a different conversation. So I don't want to say Jackson Dart is not in the cash game conversation, because I think he is. But at the same time, him only being 45, I can get up to one of these even like a Drake May against the Panthers, who's been great for fantasy purposes. Caleb Williams, who had a great game last week in a really, really fun game. Like, I'm most excited on this slate about this Bears and Raiders game, I think. So, and then Geno Smith at 54 as well, who I think is going to be a great tournament play this week. Probably not a cash option, but, I want to see when we build this lineup, like what that $1,000 really would get me versus getting up to one of these guys. So, like I said, overall, I think the conversation at quarterback comes down to if you want to get up to one of these two guys or if you want to get down to this tier. I'm going to put Caleb Williams in for right now. But that's not certain. That's not, a lock. I want to look how we build the rest of our lineup and see if I want to go down to dart or maybe I get up or maybe we stay right there. So that's kind of my thoughts on the quarterback position as a whole for cash games. For tournaments, like I said, I'm going to be really, really heavy on Geno this week. I think in tournaments, Raiders have been near the top of the league in pass rate over expectation. Very good spot against this Bears team who's down a lot of corners. And Geno at home in indoors. I've talked about this a few times, but very good indoor-outdoor splits for Geno. He's had some big games this season as well. I mean, 26 DK points last week against the Commanders. A lot of that came in garbage time, but that pays the same when you play him. I think this is a really good spot for the Raiders, and I'm going to be interested in him in tournaments. Definitely going to be interested in Drake May. I've played him the last few weeks in tournaments. I could see getting some Drake May exposure as well. Matthew Stafford sticks out for sure just because it's pretty clear, you can put him with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua and not really have to worry about anything else. All right, let's head over to running back. So at the top, once again, Christian McCaffrey has the best role in fantasy football. It's not close. He hasn't even scored a touchdown this season, a rushing touchdown, that is. He has one receiving touchdown in week 2. But, he's getting 23 and 24 DraftKings points in games where he's not scoring a touchdown. 22 and 17 rush attempts in those games, 9 and 10 receptions in those games on 25 total targets. He has the best role in fantasy. He should be more expensive than 8,500, and I think once again for cash game purposes, he's going to be the first player in your lineup. So we're plugging in Christian McCaffrey. Now after that, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon, Jonathan Taylor at 75. Those guys are all good tournament plays. I think Taylor, of the 4 that I just named, would be the most likely to find his way into my cash game lineup. Again, just a very, very elite role for him this season. Getting a little bit, 3 catches a game is fine for him. That's fine when he's getting 18, 19, 20 plus carries. It's a good, not really matchup, but good game against the Rams. Pretty decent total there, almost 50. So Jonathan Taylor's definitely in consideration for me, but I would prefer McCaffrey if it's just a strict cash game purposes. Moving on down, all these guys in this mid tier are fine with me in tournaments. Bucky Irving, James Cook's had a fantastic role this season. Big home favorite. Again, you have to worry about kind of the blowout concerns. Like maybe that gives us some Ray Davis interest in tournaments. But yeah, for cash games, James Cook, 7,100. You could talk me into him. I'd probably rather play Taylor for 400 more, but he's had a very, very good season and a very good role. Ashton Genty, definitely an interesting tournament play this week. If he doesn't do it this week against Chicago, I'd really start to get worried because this is the best possible spot for him. This is the best matchup he's seen thus far. So, hopefully Ashton Genty can churn out a big game this weekend. And then at 5,900, this is going to be the second running back that I plug in, that being Omarion Hampton. No Najee Harris. There's still going to be other running backs involved here. Hassan Haskins can come back into the mix. But, we really saw that pass catching role for Hampton last week in a game that the Chargers weren't easily winning. 6 catches for 59 yards on 7 targets, 19 rush attempts, very strong role, very good matchup against the Giants. Like, Giants have a good pass rush, but I still think Hampton could get there both on the ground and in the receiving game. And maybe Jackson Dart, kind of invigorates this Giants offense a little bit. They're not completely dead, and this is, a close game and not the Chargers, just kind of flattening them. The Chargers are, touchdown favorites in that game, but it could be close regardless. 5,900 for Omari and Hampton is going to be the first or second, I guess, plug-in at running back. There's some other running backs I like down in this 5K tier this week. Two rookies, Quinshon Judkins and Cam Scatterbo, both are 5,500. I think they're both really good plays. The Cleveland Browns love Quinshon Judkins, and I would be lying if I said he didn't look a little. He looked a little Nick Chubb-like last week. I'm not going to lie, on some of those runs. He missed the entire preseason. He missed week 1 and then comes out on his first couple practices in week 2 against the Ravens, gets 10 rush attempts and 3 catches. And then last week, they just fully unleashed him. Dylan Sampson only played a handful of snaps last week. They really just went to Quinshon Judkins as their bell cow back. 18 rush attempts, only 2 targets, but, 18 attempts with the touchdown, 5,500. I think that's a pretty good play, and I don't think he's going to be owned, so probably more so for tournaments, but really like Quinshon Judkins and some interesting, kind of correlation plays you can make on the Detroit side there in the receiving game with how man-heavy the Browns play. You think about Jameson Williams going up against that heavy man coverage. That gets me a little bit excited. As far as Cam Scatterbo, he's going to be the lead back for the Giants here with no Tyrone Tracy. You'll still have some other guys mix in, but Cam Scatterbo looks really good. We saw that pass catching role for him last week, 6 catches on 8 targets. Now, some of those were designed looks, screens, and then some of them were dump offs from Russ. I don't think that Jackson Dart is going to be as inclined as Russell Wilson to just check down and dump it off to the running back. Jackson Dart, I feel like, profiles more similar to Cam Ward, where, he's just going to throw the ball down the field at will. But I like how Cam Scatterbo looks. I think he has a pretty firm handle on the goal line work. Jackson Dart is a little mobile, so that might create some unique wrinkles in the red zone. But both Judkins and Scatterbo are interesting to me at 5,500. Yeah, that about does it for the running back pool. There's some other guys down here that you could consider for tournaments, but Judkins and Scatterbo both stick out to me. Judkins, I think, might be one of my favorite tournament plays on the slate as of Wednesday morning. Moving over to receiver, again, Puka Nacua is $7,900 on DraftKings, and I just don't understand it. He should be a $9,000 player, and I'm once again like, we need to plug him into this first look lineup. I don't understand what DraftKings is doing. He has the best fantasy role other than McCaffrey. Like, it's not close. This guy gets there every single week. 15 targets last week, 11 catches. He's going to get you a rush at like 1 or 2 carries every week. He scored a long rushing touchdown already this season. They will throw the ball to this guy at will. Him and Devontae Adams are all they have right now. They just pepper those guys with targets. I mean, you can see Devontae even, 13-8 into the target share. Puka Nacua should be $9,000, and I'm going to play him as long as he's not. So I have to put Puka Nacua in there in the first look. Lots of other good tournament plays at the top here. Nico, St. Brown, Neighbors, Abuka. Abuka being 6,800 is just crazy to me. I know it's no Mike Evans, but I mean, to flip Mike Evans in price this quickly is pretty crazy. So obviously I love Emeka Abuka, but probably not going to consider him very heavily in cash games at 6,800. Just a little bit of a high price tag there. Rome Odunze, 6,300, again, just continues to ascend. Only 3 catches on 7 targets last week, but got there with another touchdown. Really like what I've seen out of him, and 6,300 I think is a good price. Debo with potentially no Terry McLaurin. So I didn't really go through injuries, but Terry McLaurin potentially could be out for this game. That would definitely get me a little bit more excited about Debo Samuel at 6K. Jameson Williams, great tournament play, which I mentioned there. Then we get down into this 5K tier, and there's some high volume number 1 targets on their team that are underpriced. Tet McMillan at 5,900. Drake London is all the way down to 5,700 after that stinker against the Panthers. And then we have Ricky Pearsall last week. You know, he's fully ascended, someone that we were really high on in season long coming into the season. He just looks great to me, and he is going to continue to operate as the number one option here with no George Kittle. Even if Juwan Jennings is back, I still think Ricky Pearsall is a fine play at 5,700. Jacoby Myers at 5,400 in this game that I'm really excited about. I know Trey Tucker had the big game last week, but I still like Jacoby Myers at 5,400 quite a bit. Keenan's up to 53, but I think you could consider him again. Chris Olave, you know, there's concerns about the blowout script, but once again, like super high volume role at just 5,100. There's a lot of high volume options in these offenses for cheap price tags this week. So I'm going to wait on the next two receiver spots. We'll come back to it. Let's head over to tight end. You have Brock Bowers at the top. You have Travis Kelce, Tyler Warren. No Trey McBride on the slate, so that sucks. Brock Bowers, you know, dealing with that ailing knee injury. Is he 100%? I don't know. You know, not going to get up to him in cash games at 5,800, but probably an interesting tournament play just because I like that game a lot. Moving down, though, you know, Juwan Johnson, Dallas Goedert, Harold Fannin is the same price as David Njoku, which is just insane. But Harold Fannin at 3,700 once again looks like a pretty good play to me. I'll probably just lock him in. If Colston Loveland, you know, misses this game, it sounds like it's not severe, and he'll probably end up playing. But if he were to miss and it was just Cole Kmet, you could probably talk me into him at 3K, maybe for cash game purposes. Will Dissly, whether or not he plays, he missed last week, and I know Matt played Tyler Conklin in some lineups, but the Chargers really liked this rookie Oronde Gadsden. He was very, very good at Syracuse, someone that we bet a lot in college football. He came out 7 targets. If Will Dissly were to miss this game again, you know, you could consider Gadsden at 26 for cash games. I wouldn't probably play him in tournaments, but you know, $2,600, if he gets a couple points in cash, I'd probably feel pretty good about it. And you guys know I like to punt at tight end. So some stuff to wait on at the tight end position. I'm probably just going to plug in Harold Fannin for now, and we'll just go from there. And then we'll put a cheap defense in here. Let's see. Falcons at home, Bucks at home. I mean, Giants at home with that good pass rush. You could talk me into that. I'll just plug that in for now. I don't really care. So, all right. So to start off our lineup here, we have Caleb Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Omari, and Hampton, Puka Nacua, Harold Fannin Jr., and the Giants defense. That gives you actually, wait, where's the Browns are 22. They have like a really good pass rush. So we'll plug them in for even cheaper. All right. So that gives us 5,300 per position for 2 receivers and a flex. There's also potential for us to go up at quarterback from Caleb Williams if we're taking some cheaper guys, or we can go down even to a Jackson Dart and upgrade receiver even more. But with those value receivers I talked about, I don't really think, like, I think it's okay. So, like, we could keep, you know, Jacoby Myers, Chris Olave, Pearsall, London. Like, I think we have to put in Drake London at 5,700. I think we probably want to put in Ricky Pearsall at 57 or Chris Olave. Now, the problem would be, I just don't know. Like, I probably want to play 3 running backs. If I went down to Dart, like, let me just see what I could do. Like, let's just take a look. I mean, that gives you 58. Yeah, it's just not enough of an upgrade, in my opinion. So what we can do is here, let's do this. Let's put in Gadsden for now for cash games, and this is assuming Will Dissly's out. If he plays, then we're not playing Oronde Gadsden. But let's put him in. Let's go back to Caleb Williams, and then that gives us 57 per, and we can comfortably put in Ricky Pearsall, who is 5,700, and we can put in Jacoby Myers, who I like a lot. Or you could go Quinshon Judkins. You could use either Judkins or Jacoby Myers in the flex, and then that gives you room to upgrade your defense a little bit if you want. it kind of just comes down to whatever you want to do. But for the first look, week 4, NFL DFS cash game lineup: Caleb Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Omari and Hampton, Puka Nacua, Drake London, Ricky Pearsall, Oronde Gadsden, Jacoby Myers, and the Cleveland Browns defense. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments who your favorite play for week 4 is upon your first look. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see everybody on the streams this week. And make sure you tune into that Sunday morning stream, 11 a.m. Eastern, where I answer all of your last-minute fantasy football, season-long DFS, sports betting questions. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see everybody on the next one.